Section 4 of Stanton White, A Romance of the New South, by Asa Zadel Hall. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4, School Days. It were natural to suppose that the discovery of such a moral precept, and especially one so dearly bought, might exert a salutary influence on my school life for the remainder of the year. Such was not the case, however. To recognize the desirability of a certain course I found to be far different from pursuing such a course with unremitting diligence. Social events, fraternity functions, out-of-door sports, all attracted me and held me with their spell. Life in its more serious aspect faded into indistinct outlines, and the summer vacation found me a little more cynical, possessing a little less respect for myself and a little less sympathy for others. Thus, instead of enriching my life, as I had at first vaguely hoped, my trying experience tended rather to impoverish me. I need not here record the aimless and useless summer vacation I passed. Considering that my position as a college student exempted me from manual toil, I dawdled and idled away my vacation, sitting in hammocks, playing an occasional game of tennis or croquet, lounging for a week or two at a popular summer resort, until my father's slender resources compelled him to call a halt upon my continued needless expenses. At home I found fault with the simple ways and tastes of my devoted parents and sister. The nearby town had become slow to my cultivated tastes. My old-time associates had become stupid and uncongenial. "Mary," said my father to mother one day, as I lolled, half dozing in the hammock, just within earshot of the kitchen. "Mary, it seems that you've always hankered about sending our son to college. I ain't no ways complaining, but before he went away to school, he used to help me sometimes, if he wasn't off on some kind of a frolic. But now, I don't see but he feels above working. Leastwise, that's the way it looks." "Henry," said my mother, "I little thought you would be so harsh in judging our son. Can't you see that the poor boy is just tired to death with his studies? That's what the vacation is for, to give him a chance to rest." My father mumbled something about the harvest field being restful to brain workers, and then vanished in the direction of the barn. I turned over and settled myself for another nap, and paid no more attention to the incident, only to allow it to go in with a vast accumulation of unhappy circumstances to render me more discontented. So the time dragged wearily on. With a sigh of relief, I hailed the return of autumn. College would soon open, and then at least I would be free to follow my own tastes and inclinations. A few days before I left for college, my father called me to the parlor for a farewell conference. "Well, son," said he, "it's costing us a heap of money to send you to school. I hope you think you're getting your money's worth." He paused for a moment, as if half expecting a reply, but as I proffered none, he proceeded. "A heap of money. More'n we could afford if we hadn't been planning ahead, ever since you was in knee pants. Your mother and I have set a lot of store by seeing you through college, and we want you to go through right. Whatever is right and proper as to expenses, we're willing to stand. About how much will it take for this year? No, don't answer now, but figure it up, kind of close and accurate like, and hand me the figuring so's we can know what to depend on." The next day I handed him what I considered a liberal expense account. He made a check for $300 more than my estimate. "We don't care about our boy being skimped," he said, with a touch of pride. "We want him to go through just as well as the other fellows." I thanked him perfunctorily, pocketed the check, and the next day left for college. The extra $300, I reasoned, would easily enable me to attend a few more plays, smoke a better brand of cigars, and dress a little better. It was not so dull in the college town as at home. I was 3 days early, but already the trains were beginning to bring in students, new ones, mostly, who were eager to get acquainted and settled ere the school year began. I took a languid interest in their enthusiasm and active preparations for work. Then the old students began to arrive. Those of disposition similar to my own I welcomed, and we soon started upon a round of pleasure and dissipation. A year passed thus, and yet another, until the beginning of my last year at length arrived. One thing was a matter of pride with me. I gloried in the record of our college in athletics. Robust lads from rural districts found themselves well fitted for college sport. Their hardened muscles and stalwart frames needed but little training, and produced astonishing results under discipline. While I sat in my smoke-beclouded room playing cards and devising new ways of shirking school duties, these fellows were learning football tactics and were filling their lungs with oxygen and their brains with purified blood. It was rumored that autumn, in football circles, that considerable good material had been secured from the freshman class, and that among them one big guard was likely to make a star. I used to go down to watch the practice occasionally when my crowd was not on hand to play cards. It was a real pleasure to watch White, the star guard. He seemed to have himself so well in hand. Tall, muscular, dark-complected, straight as a pine tree. The very Athenians might have envied him his physique. His intelligent face lit up with such a genuine enthusiasm as he entered into the game that he seemed to remind me somehow of what I myself might have been, had I applied myself to any worthy task with one half the devotion he showed for the gridiron. His classmates spoke highly of his intellectual work as well. I began to envy him. Would that I had my college course before me and were fresh and vigorous from the farm. How I'd like to live my college days all over again. But no, I could not now retreat. With muscles and morals weakened by dissipation, with willpower gone and intellect befogged, I had no choice but to drift. Guards Back was a new play with us that year. Our coach devised it so that White's individual work might count. It was the first game of the season. White had made 2 magnificent gains, and the ball was near our opponent's goal. Just before the ball was snapped for what was expected to be the scoring run, and while the formation line was still unbroken, the opposing guard struck White such a blow as to blind him for the moment. He fumbled the ball, and it went to the other side. With the blood streaming from his nose, White called the attention of the referee to the foul, but the latter claimed not to have seen it. Calmly and with remarkable self-possession, White took his place. The end of the game was at hand, and neither side had scored. By small gains and round-the-end runs, we had forced the ball, little by little, down the field, until now we were on our opponent's 10-yard line. Twice the halfbacks were tried with no gain. Then the command comes sharp and distinctly, "Guards back!" White's signal is given. With well-formed interference, he dashes forward. The opposition, however, is not taken unaware. Before 5 yards is traversed, the interference is broken, and White goes down only to roll over and get up 3 yards from the goal. As he rises, a cowardly blow is struck. He reels forward, totters, falls. No, he staggers on. 1 step, 2 steps, then sinks under half a dozen heavyweights. A moment of anxious waiting as the prostrate players rise, one by one. Then a shout rends the air. Hats, canes, umbrellas are thrown, pennants waved, and everyone goes wild, for the ball was 6 inches over the line. But why doesn't White get up? One of his comrades tries to assist him, but the head falls back. The face is bloodless. The surgeon applies restoratives. White languidly opens his eyes. Then the wrath of the crowd breaks forth. "Mob the villain that struck White! Mob the whole team!" were the cries. White, by a tremendous effort, raised his head and supported it on his hand. "I'll be all right soon," he faltered. "Don't raise a disturbance." The whistle blew for the lineup. White reeled to his place. Then time was called, and the game was ours. The crowd rushed in and carried White in triumph on their shoulders. And from that time, his self-control, his pluck, his personal prowess became the pride and talk of town and college. As I went to my room after the game, I fell to contrasting White's action, when so shamefully treated, with the action under similar circumstances of a friendless mulatto, whose presence still seemed to dog me occasionally. Had White struck his opponent, scarcely a witness would have blamed him, though for the same offense a colored man had paid the penalty with his life. If White had not possessed the advantages of careful training and helpful home surroundings, his passion would doubtless have had as little restraint as those of the roustabout, I concluded. I began to wonder, in a lazy fashion, and without at first caring to satisfy my wondering, by what process White had arrived at such marvelous self-control. I tried to imagine his home surroundings, his former education, and thus my curiosity became thoroughly aroused. I resolved to get acquainted with White. Not intimately, just sufficiently acquainted so that I might elicit the information for which I seemed to have a morbid interest. Accordingly, I sought him out. It could not be considered otherwise than an honor to be on speaking terms with one of the most popular men in college, I told myself. Strange to say, I received no rebuff. He did not seem to suspect my covert intent, and seemed to take my advances kindly. Without scarcely understanding why I did so, I invited him to spend the Christmas vacation with me at my home. Here he showed himself so agreeable and tactful that he was immediately lionized by the community. His presence, though acting as somewhat of a restraint upon my usual dilatoriness, served, nevertheless, to render my homegoing almost enjoyable. Returning to college, I found that, silently, though surely, his influence was proving to help me. I began to visit his room with greater frequency. The purpose which led me to seek his acquaintance was all but forgotten, and I came to appreciate him for what he then was, not for what his past training had been. Often, in my visits to his room, I found another visitor, a classmate of White's, named Jenkins. The only prominent feature possessed by Jenkins was his nose. This was unusually long and was turned up at the point, reminding one, not a little, of the nose of that quadruped, which betrays its innate curiosity by rooting. Jenkins had plenty of curiosity. The day I was introduced to him, he quizzed me somewhat as follows. "How do you spell your name, Mr. Edson? In what class are you? You are somewhat older than Mr. White and myself, I suppose. Might I ask how— but what was I going to say? Oh, yes. Where is your home? Near Rome? Oh, dear me. You came all the way across the water to blank? But how far is it?" I explained that I lived near Rome, New York, and abruptly made my escape. Jenkins had small, deep-set eyes and a sallow complexion. I learned that his mission to White's room was no less philanthropic than to secure all the assistance possible from White, because of the latter's good class standing. White? he would say with the utmost show of friendliness. "If I only had your capable mind, I might blank. How do you ever remember things the way you do? If I could only apply myself to one thing blank. But I inherited a roving disposition from my aunt. She started in as a lady of leisure and ended blank. What was I saying? Oh, yes. If you please, Mr. White, won't you translate my Latin for me? I know I can never get it in the world. So good of you. Now, if you will work this problem, I shall feel that I can never repay you." At first I was vexed when White refused to take a hand in games of chance, and when he exhibited a preference for the study table, rather than the theater. Yet withal he was so earnest, so enthusiastic over his college work, that his companionship must necessarily either repel or inspire me. It did the latter, for I could not hate him. Still, I had no ambition to shine in the classroom. It was so much easier to slide through examination and recitation by horsing, cribbing, and resorting to all manner of dishonest methods. White's frequent visits to my room seemed to awaken a long-dormant sense of honor within me. His manliness did for me what my own weak will had never accomplished. The change was so gradual that I did not at first notice it. But our old Greek professor recognized my improvement before I myself did. One day I gave a hard-wrought, correct translation of a difficult passage. Kai commended me freely. I shall never forget it, nor cease to thank him for his kind words. Praise for honest work was something so new and strange that it created an epoch in my life. I began to apply myself with new vigor. Old companions began to drop me one by one. My evenings found me busy with my books. Fresh air instead of tobacco smoke filled my room. I burned the midnight oil. For a while, the advancement which I sought so eagerly seemed to elude me. The steady grind, with so little apparent result, discouraged me. But for White, I would have given up in despair. His presence and example, his cheerful words and ready sympathy gave me encouragement and fresh impetus. He viewed life from a different standpoint than did I. Defeat was not in his vocabulary. His stalwart inflexibility saved me. By and by I gained a vantage ground whence I could look backward and say, "There has been progress," forward and say, "There is hope." The end of the year was at hand. At White's suggestion, I competed for a place on the Emmett Prize debate. The profession for which I was preparing, said he, would demand that I be an adept in debate. He considered that the prize debate offered an opportunity for me to set a new standard of proficiency for myself. The subject of the debate interested me. Resolved, that education offers the best solution for the race problem in the South. I read, thought, drilled, until the argument seemed to be a part of myself. White assisted me with untiring energy. He gave me new thoughts and valuable suggestions after I had come to believe that I knew thoroughly every argument and every avenue of approach to the subject. From the preliminary debate, I was chosen as one of the speakers for the final public appearance. I chose the affirmative side. The negative won, but I was too deeply interested to permit a decision of a board of judges to change my views or dampen my ardor. Accordingly, I proposed to White, who had now become an almost inseparable companion, that we together visit the South and together study the question first-handed. I told him of Mr. Edson's cordial invitation, and assured him that he himself would be welcome if he chose to accompany me thither. I explained that my studious habits had proved of financial benefit to me, for I had managed to save $400 out of my yearly allowance. This, I told him, would pay the way for us both if we were careful in our expenditures. White did not receive my proposition with as much favor as I had expected. He concluded by saying, "I must have time to consider this matter. Commencement week is at hand. Final examinations demand my attention. I'll bear the matter in mind and give you my decision at the earliest possible moment. I warn you, however, not to count too much on my accompanying you, inasmuch as I fear that I may be obliged to seek employment in order to be provided with funds for the coming school year." End of section 4, read by James K. White, Chula Vista.